what you eat before, during, and after a run can make or break your performance. Whether you're training for a 5K, a marathon, or even an ultra marathon, fueling and nutrition are critical. And you need to take this seriously both during your race, but importantly, during your training. In this video, I break down simple tips, real world tips for runners that will help you have enough energy during your run and importantly, recover so that you're ready for your next workout and you're ready for your race. Hi, Simon here. Welcome to my channel. I'm an ultra runner and I want to provide you tips to help you have your own adventure out there. Today we're talking about fueling and nutrition. It's important we won't just focus about what you eat during your run, but also importantly what you eat before and after those runs. Because fueling and nutrition are critical, and that's something that is often overlooked by newer runner or newer ultra runner, focusing a lot on training plan, on long run, on threshold run, even on fueling during your race, but not realizing just how critical what you eat during your training and after your training is a critical factor to success. Ask any experienced endurance athlete, they will all say the same. Getting fueling and nutrition right was a key point in their development to achieve the performance that they've achieved. And not just on race day. Of course, on race day, you want to have the energy to keep pushing, but that's also true for your training run. If you want to perform and have good workout, you need to fuel properly your workout. And you need to make sure that you recover properly, and you want to make sure that you reap the benefit of these workouts. Nutrition after workouts help you recover, but also help you build and make the most out of this strenuous exercise so that your body can adapt. So today, I'll break out what you need to eat before, during, and after your runs, both in training and on race day. And towards the end, I'll also cover some of the common mistake and misconception about both fueling and also nutrition. And let's start right here. There is a difference between fueling and nutrition. Yeah, both are about food, but they serve different purpose and are done at different time. Fueling is anything that relates to what you're gonna eat during your run. So it's about providing energy to your body so that you can keep rolling. Whereas nutrition is more encompassing everything, technically also fueling. But when I talk about nutrition, I'll focus much more about what happens before and importantly after your run. Arguably, what is before a run could be called pre-fueling because the goals are a little bit more similar to fueling. But what comes afterwards or on your day-to-day nutrition, the goal is very different. Fueling, we'll talk about it very soon. It's almost impossible to fuel too much. Nutrition, you have to find the right balance for you. Let's start with fueling and pre-fueling. And the goal here is really to provide a source of readily available energy for your body to use when you're exercising. We can both use carbs and fat when we're exercising, but the rate at which we burn them is very different, which means that when you're doing something that is higher intensity, proportionally more of your energy will come from carbs. The problem is that we have a limited amount of carbs that are stored through glycogen. So pre-fueling and fueling are particularly relevant for exercise that are a little longer when you will go through a significant portion of your glycogen reserve. By pre-fueling and fueling, on top of the glycogen energy that you can use as carb, you also have what you've consumed, meaning that the proportion of what you use as carb and as fat will be slightly different. And that's where you can have better performance, especially when you're thinking about distance like half marathon, marathon, and longer. That means that pre-fueling and fueling, there's a lot of carbs involved in that. Not only carbs, but a lot of carbs. And it's easy to think that this is most relevant for race day. Obviously important for race day, but that's also very relevant for your workout, especially the longer workout. If you want to have a good workout where you're able to push, you need to have the energy for that. The second piece is that carbs can be difficult to digest on the run. If you only do that on race day, you might have some GI issues. So it's good to train not just your leg, but also your gut. On the flip side, you have nutrition. Yeah, a little bit what you have before your run, but importantly, right after your run, and then more on a day-to-day basis. And the goal here is twofold. The first one is really recovery and building your muscle. So obviously a lot of protein, but it will also be to replenish that glycogen reserve. So carbs will also be important post-workout because if you go in energy deficit chronically, you'll be underfueled chronically and that will impact your performance in training, on race day, and it will drastically increase your risk of injury. If you want to work on body composition or your weight, you reserve a period of time in your training cycle where you will not increase your workout, but you will focus both on nutrition and, of course, working out. Once you reach your body goals, that's where you can gradually increase mileage and intensity to prepare for your race. And a side note, I think it's really important to not overly obsess about both the number of calories that you're consuming and your body weight. It's really a difficult balance to have enough energy when you're building up mileage, and the danger is definitely injury or over obsessing about these things. So we need to be kind to ourselves. The best diet is a diet that you can follow long term. What do you need to eat before a run? That's actually a difficult question because your need will vary based on the distance. The longer the run, the more important it becomes to eat something before it. It's pre-fueling. It's almost cheating on your fueling strategy where you can get a head start and not be in calorie deficit from the get-go. Which means that some people get into the habit of running without eating anything before their run. And that's fine when it's a shorter run, but maybe you're getting into the wrong habit of not eating before you run. I would say it's a good habit to eat a little something before any run, regardless of the distance, so that you get used to running with something in your stomach. If you plan to run long distance, that's something you need to be comfortable with. So why not practice that as soon as possible? And your need will vary based on the distance. If you're going for a run that is shorter than 1 hour, it's more like a snack type of situation where it would be good to have a little bit of something. But because your run is shorter, the availability of the energy that you're actually eating is much more limited. That means that you need to focus a little bit more on fast acting carbs. So for me, what I do when it's a shorter run, I'll do something like maybe a banana, maybe some juice. And I will typically do that like an hour before going for my run. If you're going for something longer than 1 hour, that's where pre-fueling or eating something before your run becomes increasingly important and will replace some of the calories that you would have need to take while you're running. On the long run, you want to have a mix of different macros. You don't only want to have simple carbs, you will want to have complex carbs, some protein, and also some fat. This way, the absorption of the energy will be a little bit more dilute and it will help you fuel throughout your run, not just the beginning of it. The dietitian, nutritionist, they will say, have it 2 or 3 hours before your run. Practically speaking, especially on race day, that's just impractical to do that. That would mean sometimes waking up at 1 or 2 in the morning because a lot of races, especially longer distance, are pretty early in the morning. So practically, what do I suggest? I aim for something like 60 to 90 grams of carbs. Now, don't over obsess about the number. I'm giving them for indication. That's throughout all of the video. Very concretely, what I like myself will be, for example, a bagel with peanut butter and banana. This way I have all of the groups. With the bread, I have some complex carb, peanut butter, there's a lot of fat, some protein, and then with the banana, sometimes with honey, then it's a little bit more fast-acting carbs. Another one that I might do sometimes will be bread with eggs and avocado. Same concept, you can see very clearly that you have all groups of macro, and that helps my stomach personally. It helps just, for that meal specifically before the long run or the race, but also throughout my long run or the race, the fact that there's something sitting in my stomach will help me digest and not have as much GI issue. But ultimately, that's something that you need to practice yourself, and the best time to practice that will be on your weekly long run. The last piece I would say about what you eat before a run, we focus a lot on eating, but don't forget to drink, especially if it's a hot race. All of this, like the before running that I'm describing, has nothing to do with carb loading. Carb loading is often done wrong or at the wrong time. I have a video about carb loading that explains when you should or should not do it and how to do it, but it's definitely not something that you do right before you run. What do you need to eat during your run? Honestly, it's quite an art. It's not something that can be described and then you apply it. That's probably one of the reasons we talk all the time about fueling. It's because it's very obviously important. And it's very obvious when you get it wrong. You can be vomiting, you can have diarrhea, or you're under fueling and you're bunking. If you want to avoid these things, practice in your training so that on race day, you'll be prepared, your gut will be very tolerant to the carbs that you're taking, and you don't have any surprise. Your needs in terms of calories will increase. And I don't mean if you run twice the distance, then you need twice as many calories in total. That's actually not true. The rate at which you need to consume calories will actually increase. So for short distance, maybe 100 calories per hour would be sufficient. But then you come into the 50K distance and now you need to go at 300 calories per hour. I have a video that really focuses on fueling during your run and shows the calculation for that. But the high level summary is what you'll find out is the longer you need, the more calories per hour you need. And at some point, you reach a breaking point where the amount that you're eating is not dependent on how many calories you need. It's dependent on how many calories you can tolerate without being sick. You can't eat 600 calories per hour for a long period of time. That's just not realistic. You're gonna be sick. Don't try this at home, kids. But that's what you would need if you go at like 6 miles per hour, depending on your body weight. So there is a gap between what you can eat and what ideally you should be eating. And what we want to do in training is we want to increase your tolerance so that you can get closer to the 200, 300 calories per hour for a sustained amount of time. It's easier said than done, and you really need to take that seriously. It's easy to write a training plan and focus on how many miles per week are you doing, but start early, fueling your long run so that you become more tolerant. And I would say that fueling during your run becomes important when you're starting to reach the half marathon distance. It's a very good habit to do it before that, but you will notice a difference in terms of performance starting at half marathon or longer. And the rule of thumb is go for 200 to 300 calories per hour. Like I said, this is not based on how many calories you need. This is based on how many calories you realistically eat for a sustained amount of time without being sick. And some people will describe that in terms of grams of carbs. I prefer calories because I advocate for not only taking carbs, but the calculation is pretty simple. 1 gram of carb is 4 calories. So if we're talking, for example, 240 calories would be 60 grams of carbs. And what is commonly said also is go for something like 50 to 90 grams of carb. And what works very well will be fast-acting carbs, things like gels, gummy, waffle, banana, Coca-Cola, endurance mix like Tailwind. All of these will be absorbed relatively quickly. And it's good to take any of them with a fair amount of water. First, because you need the water, but also it makes digestion a little bit easier. Also keep in mind that sometimes I will say water, but you also need electrolyte. So if you can drink electrolyte, drink electrolyte. That also becomes more and more important when you're going for longer distances. And speaking of longer and longer distances, obviously my specialty is running 100 miles. So we're talking about very, very long effort. So some tips that I have developed: the longer you go, the harder it becomes to maintain your 200 or 300 calories per hour. And it's good to not overly focus on simple carbs. Gels can only bring you so far before it's coming out one way or the other. So trying to mix it up with some real food and food that contains also either complex carbs or will be protein and fat. Things that work well for me: ramen noodle, grilled cheese, or potatoes in any form, fries, chips, mashed potatoes. All of these work very well for whatever reason. What should you eat after a run? And I divide that in 2 categories. There's really the post-run kind of recovery period, and then the more broadly after a run, holistically nutrition. So after a run, we're talking 30, 60 minutes after a run. There's the anabolic window. It's good to have a fair amount of protein and a fair amount of carbs. What you really try to achieve in this recovery period is recovery. And recovery, of course, is about building back your muscle and building them stronger. That's the whole point of working out. So you want some protein for that. But the other thing that you really want is you've burned through a fair amount of your glycogen reserve. And if you want to work out tomorrow or the day after, you will need that energy back. So you also have to have some carbs. The ratio that is often discussed is 3-1. Again, I'm going to say the numbers, but usually just having a smart meal will just do that without you doing too much of the calculation. So protein wise, it's usually recommended, depending on your body weight, to have something like 20 or 40 grams of protein. If you go too much, then the amount that you're actually absorbing gets reduced. So that's why it's kind of the sweet spot. And then for carbs, you do the ratio of 3-4. Obviously, it depends on your body weight. Personally, it's going to be something like 60 to 90 grams. And it's a little bit based on tolerance. Again, the numbers don't really matter so much as you understand that you need a source of protein and carbs. And what works very well for me, the first one will be the simple chocolate milk. I guess that's because I miss being a kid and being so excited about having chocolate milk. So for me, it's kind of a reward after a good workout. It's like, good job, Simon. The other one will be more like protein shake with a bunch of fruit and then maybe some Greek yogurt and that. And in both cases, you've noticed it's both liquids. There's two reasons for that. One is that it's going to help you absorb these faster. It's especially relevant for the protein. But also, just after a run, you're most likely slightly dehydrated. So having a little bit extra fluid will be helpful to feel better. But there's only so much that you can consume post-workout, and it's not just about post-workout that will help for recovery. It's much more important to think about protein globally daily intake rather than specifically about that window of opportunity. And yeah, if you can have something in these 45 minutes, that's good. But if you miss it, it's not the end of the world. You have the whole day to eat other things, to eat healthy. And eating healthy is very subjective. Personally, I recommend a normal diet. I think there's a lot of fads that comes and go when it comes to how you should eat on a day-to-day basis. When you're in any endurance sport, you will hear about these things, and these come and go. It's pretty common to talk about the high-fat diet. I'm a little concerned about that. Are there consequences for health on the long run of these? It's a good question. Some people will talk about carnivore diet. Personally, I've never tried that, so I cannot speak from experience for that. But what I see is a lot of people that have been doing that have positive comment to say at first, but then after a few years, they have a lot of problems, injury, performance drop. I think any extreme diet can be problematic and can have health consequence. I think personally a diet that you can follow is the best diet. That's my 2 cents. At the same time, I'm very open-minded about people trying different things. It's understandable that you want to try different things. And if you see positive results, that you will go for that. I have several friends that are vegan and have positive things to say about that. That's not for me. It's for them, and good for them. But I'm curious to hear if you've tried any of these diets. Let us know in the comment below. Has this helped you? Do you have good things to say about it, bad things to say about it? What was the pros and cons? And finally, let's talk about some common mistake and common misconception about fueling and nutrition in endurance sports and in running. A very common one, which is more common with newer runner, is that I don't need to fuel, or I fuel fasted. That's how I feel the best. That's how I perform the best. That is usually true up to a certain distance, and that's fine. If you're running a 5K and you want to do it fasted, that's okay. You probably will be performing totally fine. You're not reaching anywhere close to burning through your glycogen reserve. The problem that I have with that is that if you build these bad habits of not pre-fueling or fueling, it's gonna become increasingly difficult to change these habits once you go to longer distances. The other common mistake is overfueling, which sounds contradictory, but first let's emphasize that you will not be able to consume too many calories in terms of what you need. What you will be able to do though is to eat too many calories or too many carbs and then be sick, either upward or downward. That's very common. You read online about especially pro athletes that do 90, 120 grams per hour, and you think, okay, like, let me try that. They're performing very well. You need to build up to get that resistance. And just like how fast can you run, we all have different ceiling, and you will need to find that for yourself. What is comfortable? What can you reach? What can you push a little bit by increasing gradually? Just like your training plan, you don't go run 100 miles on your first day. You build that up gradually. Same thing with carbs and fueling during your run. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the role and how to carb load, which is why I have a video specifically about that. Carb loading is discussed a lot, but honestly, it's quite situational. And everything we've talked about today is way more important than carb loading. Not training, fueling, or trying something new on race day. I mean, it's an obvious one. Sometimes you don't have a choice, right? You have no option at aid station that you've tried before. You gotta try something new. But as much as possible, do it in training. Know what you're gonna eat during your run. The last one is over focusing on fueling. And yeah, oops, like I did it, right? Like I talked a lot about fueling. And one of the reasons is that it's very obviously important because everyone has bunk and knows that it's because I didn't fuel enough. And then you try to fuel and then you need new underwear. So it's very visible that you did it wrong. What we don't necessarily see as well is if you're doing your post-run recovery phase wrong or you're not eating properly, it's hard to say like, clearly my training block is not going as well as I wanted because I don't have enough protein in my recovery phase. You won't be able to make that connection. But if your nutrition post-workout and on your day-to-day basis doesn't provide you the tools to build these muscle, to recover, to have enough glycogen for your next workout, your next workout will not be as good as it could have been. Your recovery will not be as good. You will not benefit as much from these workouts. And it can create a cycle where your performance in training is not as good as it could be. Therefore, the outcome of the training is not as good as it could be, which can even lead to injury. So I know it's easy to focus on, did I run too many miles or not enough mile in my training plan? But ask yourself, am I providing my body with the tools to actually do these workouts? And that's it, folks. These are my tips about what you should eat before, during, and after your runs that will sustain both good training habit, and will help you perform on race day. If you appreciate this video, please leave a thumbs up. I'm curious to know what has helped you improve your performance when it comes to both nutrition and fueling. Let us know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time.